Hello. Welcome back to Fireside Chats with Ada Lovelace winners. I'm Shercole King, and I'm so excited and can't wait for us to chat with our tech founder winner, SaLisa Berrien. Congratulations.
Thank you, Shercole. I'm super excited. My team's excited about this as well.
Also, I'm super excited to meet Sara Sutton, our judge for this category. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And thank you both for joining us today. So today our topic is using your passion to breed your purpose. Before we get started, let's get to know everyone. Can you both tell me a little about yourself and all of the great work you're doing and how you actually got into technology?
Yeah, so I'm a mechanical engineer, born and raised in Bethlehem, Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I remember being in high school and my teacher telling me, what do you want to be when you get older? And I said, I want to be an attorney or a radio broadcaster. And she says, we have enough attorneys in the world. You should be an engineer, because I was good at math and science. And I didn't know what an engineer was. And this teacher went on her way to lead me and guide me into understanding it. She had me shadow engineers. So I ended up going to get my mechanical engineering degree at the University of Pittsburgh. And then from there, my first job was working in the utility industry. So I did an internship at Allegheny Power. And then my first job out of college was with Pennsylvania Power and Light. And that's kind of my entree into the energy space and energy efficiency, and then how me developing my company to eliminate energy waste in buildings and repurpose that waste for good. That all came about because of my childhood experience of not having that exposure to clean energy and being able to pay electric bills every month where my family couldn't afford it. So those are some of the reasons why I ended up where I'm at today.
Great. And SaLisa, you and I hadn't made the connection. Actually, I'm from Pittsburgh originally. So some Pennsylvania roots, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So yes, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was always very multidisciplinary, and I went to university across the country. Actually, I went to UC Berkeley, and when I was there, I started off in international relations and poli-sci and a bit of law, and ended up pivoting. My junior year, I actually dropped out of university to start an internet company, which back then was very early days, so in '95, and it was built out of passion. It was built out of I was not into technology, as I'd said necessarily, but the internet was coming out and you could see the different applications. And for me, it was looking for jobs and trying to find internships. Actually, I was trying to look for an internship across the country and I couldn't find one. And so I identified that the database technology that was coming out and utilizing the internet to create an opportunity to aggregate the data there for college students and graduate students and entry-level jobs of all types. So I dropped out of university to do that. And with that deep dive into kind of the internet tech space, it kept me on that path in a lot of ways throughout my career. Although I've taken some zigzags, and I encourage zigzags. I think that's, as long as you're following a passion or something that really is meaningful to you for whatever the driving reason is very important. And then a bit fast forward to, I guess it's 15 years ago now, but I was pregnant with my first child and looking at opportunities to work in a way that would allow me to be a parent and active in my career in the way I wanted to. And so I started Flex Jobs, also an internet job site, and have stayed kind of in this tech space for the last 15 years, helping to democratize the way we bring people into work, whether it's geographic neutrality and economic development, as well as working mothers and other people who the traditional work model doesn't fit, and a variety of things along those lines. So, and here I am, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So I think something many people actually don't truly understand is what exactly is passion as well as purpose. I think often in our society, we mistake what passion and purpose is and how it looks and feels based on our societal perspectives. In your opinion, what exactly is passion and purpose for you?
So when I think about passion, I really think about what drives me, what gets me up out of the bed every day. And I can do it with ease. Like it's not considered work. It's not a struggle. And so that kind of leads me to like my purpose. And so when I look at my purpose in life, I know that I was created to do this certain thing. And whatever that thing is, it ties into whatever your passion is typically, where you're able to do it all with ease. And so when I look at my life and I look at where I'm at, it's always been my passion has led to delivering on my purpose.
For me, passion can come in a lot of forms. I think sometimes it's idealistic. Sometimes I believe it's hopeful. It can be something that's deep inside of us that we can't explain, that we've just known is for us, as SaLisa said. And then other times it can be a passion for solving a problem that's in front of you. And for me, that's been my form of passion, has been to solve a problem. But that can be, I think there's actually been a lot of discussions in the career space around passion and finding jobs just in your passion, because it can sound so, again, idealistic and not necessarily realistic. But a passion can also be a passion to be able to provide a safe, financially stable home for your family.
Right.
So if that is your driving passion, if that is the most important thing to you at that moment, then that is a passion. And that might usurp the desire to start a yogurt company, or, like there's different ways you can look at it. Some passions are more practical and some are more idealistic. But whatever it is for you, it's often that you're thinking about it and you can't get it out of your mind. There's something about it that is really hooking you in and getting you excited. As Lisa said, again, something that doesn't feel like work. It feels like something you want to do.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Sarah. I think that's something that is ignored a lot when people think about the practical side of, passions and purposes. That's just as important and it's just as wonderful as any of the ideals and idealistic things that we come up with. You kind of already touched on it, but how do we all get to a space where we can intertwine, both of those, the passion and purpose, if we get lucky? So many of us are doing the things we are most passionate about on a side or just as a hobby because we don't want it to feel like it's a job, or we just don't have the capacity to be able to do it as a career for a living. How can we get to a point to intertwine those passions and turn it into a profit and create like a business or whatever it is that brings you joy? How can you get from that one step to the next step?
I think there's really interesting ways you can do it. I mean, with flex jobs, the easiest thing we tell job seekers to do, or people who are looking for a career change, is to maybe type in, like, if you go to a job site such as ours, type in a word that is fun for you. Is it biking? Is it cooking? Is it something that you consider a hobby, but that might actually have a lot more in professional opportunities than you realize? Or it could be something that maybe you're doing a certain vertical skill, but at a company that does those things or produces products along those things. So there can be ways to kind of intertwine it that way. And there's also, I don't want to make it seem too simple, and I get that it's not, but there's some really fun videos online I've seen over the years. And I think it's, if you type in like jobs, people doing jobs with love or something like that, or with joy. I mean, and no matter if you love to dance and you are working anywhere, like almost anywhere, you can bring dance into it, like in fun little ways. Like if you're, I don't know, I'm thinking of if you work in a restaurant and you love to dance, like maybe you're up at the counter and dancing a little bit. I saw a crossing guard in San Diego or in California who would dance while he was doing the crossing guard, and people would circle around him to smile and cheer and laugh, and he engaged. And so I kind of want to, like, that's a really out there side, like that kind of like the really fun, inserting yourself truly into whatever you do and bringing your joy to it. And then there's the other side of, in your professional career, how to integrate elements that can be in your skills development. Maybe it's volunteering on the side in areas like that if you can't find a role in it that's paid at the time, and that can be through kids' schools, it can be through your community, and a whole wide variety of ways, but they can build your resume with some of those skills that you do enjoy more.
Yeah, Sarah, I mean, I love all the points that she made, and I piggyback on that. And basically say, when I talk to young people, I always say, what are you excited about? What really motivates you? And then when they lead off and say, I want to make a lot of money, I say, don't lead with money. Lead with your passion. And I said, I guarantee you, if you lead with your passion, the money will follow. Because when you're passionate about something, you're going to do well, because every day you're excited to get up to hit that challenge. So when Sara had mentioned about some people, their passion is solving problems, that's been mine. So it doesn't matter what I've done in the energy space, it all was surrounded by solving problems. And so if I got up every day and I wasn't solving a problem, I would be very bored, and then it would seem like work to me. And so for me, getting out there and just focusing on what my passion is, and my passion being solving those problems, it has led me to a place where I don't have to worry about, like, I want to make, where people say, I want to make this amount of money, so I'm going to go after that job. And then they go after those jobs and they're not satisfied because it's not tied to their passion.
Yeah, and SaLisa, something you just said makes me think as well. Having money as a goal, as just a flat goal, I think the next question is why? Why that number? What does that mean to you? What are you solving for? What would that number give you in your life? Or what is it, again, tying back to that reason, is it to support your family? Is it so you can go on a trip with your mom? Is it, what is it behind that that's giving you that passion and that meaning? Because money in and of itself, it's very functional, right? I mean, it's something you either save or you spend. And there's really the passion behind it. The reason why people lean on it so easily is because society pushes us to. But it's I really encourage younger folks and even older folks to really think of like the why behind it, because you can sometimes find those. You can sometimes learn a little bit about yourself when you really think deeper about it.
Yeah, and when you get to the why, it might uncover the fact that, am I doing it for the right reasons? And then tying back to, like, getting back to that whole passion purpose piece. Mm-hmm. Is it going to get you really to where you want to be in the long term based on what you say, your why is?
And well, since this is a good conversation, if you don't mind, I'll share. I have a friend who's going through a job search right now, and she had chosen to leave her role, and she's at a point in her career where she has an opportunity to take a breath and think about it. And just hearing her say what her thought process was about what is she passionate about accomplishing in this world was kind of how she was framing it. What are the bigger issues that are important to her? And she was thinking really big, like the environment, solving environmental problems, solving economic inequity, like a whole bunch of different areas that she was and then thinking about. And then she would look at organizations that how could she approach those different passions. And each one had a whole bunch of different. You could work for a nonprofit, you could work for a think tank, you could work for all of these different companies or organizations. And sometimes when you just think of what that big driver is, what is important to you, because that hopefully will be the thing that doesn't feel like work, or at least you feel like it's meaningful. And then you can find different conduits into that, perhaps.
Yeah, it actually helps you align, what your values are with the companies you're looking at too. Absolutely. So like doing that pre-work gets you to the post where you're at a place where it's really a delightful experience and you feel like you're making an impact.
Great point. Yeah, amazing.
Thank you. Question to you, SaLisa. When you were building your company and founding your company, what was that big aha moment? Because, as you know, when people are building new businesses, it's stressful. And I'm pretty sure many moments where you're like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm putting myself through this stress. What was the moment when you decided that, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be and what am I supposed to be doing?
So my aha moment was when the customer that I targeted, as far as looking to sell our solution to, we presented our MVP, which is our minimal viable product. And the customer said, wow, this hits on everything we were looking for and more. And they came back and said, well, in your proposal to us, could you just put in what we asked for? And then we said, okay, we will. And they said, if you want to talk about the other things, put it in the appendix. And so I was a little bit hesitant about should I put it in the appendix or not? Because they were very clear, only put in there what we asked for. I ended up still putting in the appendix because I wanted them to see the bigger picture. And they ended up selecting us as the provider. But then after they selected us, they were acquired by another company. And that new company really resonated with everything that we had put in the appendix. And so the contact person came back and says, SaLisa, you won't believe this, but our parent company now is really talking about all of those points you initially brought up to us. And so we'd like to now discover and go further with that. And so for me, I was like thinking I was building this one solution, and then I had to stay in the realm that the customer put me in that box. And I just kind of went on the limb and put that in the appendix just to see that we were talking the language that they were looking to get to in the future. So it kind of made them say, these are the right partners for us. And so for me going forward, it motivated me. And I got to tell you, this is like my number one customer. They talk about us all the time. They're our biggest champions. And it actually gives me the latitude to say, like, you know what, keep digging deeper and keep understanding what customers are asking for. Because when you narrowly focus on what they want, you can deliver that and more.
That's really exciting. As somebody who loves to solve problems, that's definitely a like, yes, solve it and more. I love that. For me, I would say it was very unexpected in general. Both of the companies I have started came at times where I really shouldn't have started them. I guess basically there are a lot of things that were telling me, do not do this. And in some cases it was my parents the first time around, don't drop out of school, but pretty loudly actually. And what that meant to like why I felt that it was still like having to make that case, having to really dig deep and identify how, why this is an aha moment for me, that I even thought I could do it, that I even thought that it was worth the risk, that I even thought that following what I believed in conceptually was worth the life changes it would cause. And then my second organization, I was pregnant with my first child, just finishing up a project on our home that was over budget, and I'd been laid off when I was 7 months pregnant, which was really great. And I stubbornly went out and interviewing for jobs in my third trimester, which, as you can imagine, did not go particularly well. And it was, hitting that kind of glass ceiling in many cases as a woman. Glass ceilings can come in a lot of different forms. And for me, in this particular one, it was people in an interview looking at me, looking at my belly and saying, I'm sorry, can you come back in 6 months? Regardless of the fact that I could have knocked that job out of the park if they'd given me a few months off, right? And so my passion came to a point where to make that choice was so difficult. All kinds of things were not at the point to take on yet another big area of my life, and to take it with a really huge risk too, associated with, from a financial standpoint, losing a steady income to take to start something. And so it was. I think that as we think of what our aha moments are, they can come in a lot of different forms. Sometimes they're convenient, usually they're not. And I think paying attention to that, following where you can find the best solutions and problems to solve, or things that you feel like, for me, have a barometer of putting good in the world. That's kind of one of my barometers personally. If it's something that really resonates as an aha, like this will help put good in the world, it's somewhere I usually tend to follow.
Thank you. I think the main concept that you both touched on was don't allow other people to put you in a box, and don't allow yourself to put you in a box. And I think you both touched on that, how that's important, especially when founding a company. My next question for you guys is there any specific tips or things that people should start thinking about or considering when thinking about actually starting a tech startup or any type of business? What are those things that you should start thinking about when they like, you know what, I'm really passionate about this and I think I'm going to try and do this? What should they be doing next?
So one of the first things that I say to people that's looking to start their own tech company is understand that it's not for the faint of heart. Like, you got to be in it for running the full race, because there's going to be a lot of discouragement, as Sara even mentioned earlier, about, like, you know, where people said, like, told her, no, that doesn't sound like a good thing to do. You know, I look back on my journey, and I had a lot of people, from family to friends to investors to everyone, saying, you know, this is not the right thing. Like, you know, it's not, and you're in a crowded space, and, you know, why, like, you know, you're just this woman, like, how do you think you could do this? Like, it's such a big problem. Like, what makes you think that you're, you know, capable of solving this? And then, like, even having people say that, you know, whose idea was it? Who gave it to you? You know, basically, you know, saying, like, they didn't believe that I came up with the idea. And so what I tell folks, especially women that are getting into the tech space, is you have to believe in yourself more than you've ever believed in yourself before. Because you're going to get a whole lot of no's. You're going to get a whole lot of naysayers. You're going to reach a whole lot of bumps in the road when you're trying to get your first customer. And so you cannot allow those things to discourage you. And so my, like, fundamental advice I have for everybody is have that belief in yourself so strong that no one could waver you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is not for the faint of heart. And there's a reason why 95% of entrepreneurial organizations go out of business within the first couple of years. And that's a dismaying number at times. It also speaks to how it's important to be prepared. Do your due diligence, look at the landscape, do your research, compound that with your belief in yourself and your idea, and ideally others in your network. So if it's a co-founder or an advisor, or the people that you create space for around you, those are really critical roles. It's even harder to start a company alone than to do it with support. And so trying to create a healthy support system for yourself is very important. Being really honest with yourself about the skills that you are strong in and others that you are maybe not as strong in, and where you will need complementary people around you to help fill those gaps. I think that those are kind of being really honest in the assessment of the situation, and not, I think where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong, whether it's in the tech space or otherwise, is that they get really blindly optimistic that their idea is so great that it's going to get out there and prove itself on its own. And that's rarely the case. Usually it takes, as SaLisa said, a ton of work, a ton of belief in yourself. I mean, sacrifices. It takes sacrifices. It takes, you're gonna have to choose things to do this over other things in your life. I mean, these are just the facts of being an entrepreneur to some degree. And I think that it can be really exciting though. I mean, it can be both one of the most challenging and gratifying, growing, like inspiring experiences ever. And so leaning into that part, but understanding that there will be other parts too. It's not all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. So.
Sara, I really love that you said what you said, because it really complements what I was trying to say, as far as believing yourself. Because if you don't have the pieces in place that Sara just mentioned, like doing your research, making sure, number one, that your solution is solving a problem that someone says they had. So I'm making an assumption that you did all those things, because if you didn't do that, you're already like way behind, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So you got to do those things, because you have a lot of people that come out with a solution, and then they go to customers, and it's not a problem that a customer felt was a problem. So it's like, and then you're trying to force somebody. And it actually reminds me of when I actually decided to start COI Energy. I was working at another startup, and the CEO says, hey, at the end of the year, why are we not closing deals? We need to let the customers know that we're selling them a Lexus value. And so you got to sell them on the benefits of the Lexus. And then I raised my hand. I said, but suppose they want a Toyota. Why would we try to make them try to buy a Lexus when they're saying they don't want a Lexus? Now, all you got to do is repackage your solution and give them this Toyota. And then when you give them the base model that they're asking for, you can add on additional features and it'll surpass the value of a Lexus. But we're so short-sighted in saying, I built this Bentley, so you need to buy the Bentley. When I don't need a Bentley, I just need a Toyota. Mm-hmm. And so what Sara was saying about doing your research, understanding, what problem you're really trying to solve. Is it a problem? And then from there, because when you get to this tech ecosystem, you're going to run into all those things that I mentioned earlier where you're going to be the naysayer. So you got to make sure that you fundamentally have all of your checks and balances in place. And then from there, the belief in yourself, you totally have to, to have that in order to get beyond it. But don't have, like Sara said, have this whole ego thinking hey, my stuff is great. And you have this belief that's unfounded. It needs to be founded in something, and primarily is make sure you have customers that you've done some discovery with to understand that you're solving a problem that they need to have solved.
Mm-hmm. And if it's okay, I'll layer on a little bit about investment. I think paying attention to how you're going to fund your organization, be really clear with yourself that there are different conditions associated with each kind of funding. And so if you're going to bootstrap, that's going to have implications for yourself. If you're going to, be cutting your corners so that you own 100% of the company or the majority of the company, again, there'll be certain sacrifices that you'll have to choose. And some of those mean that you'll probably have to go slower than you would if you got outside investment or angel investment. And then angels really depends on the individual people you could potentially get money from. If you're working with an economic development fund, you also want to understand what their expectations are for how the money can be used and perform. And then obviously in the tech space, there's a lot of hype about VC, although unfortunately a very small percentage of that goes to women-funded organizations, which hopefully will change. So I do recommend trying to find a VC fund that has women involved, first of all, because I think that knowing this audience, I'll just say it this way. I think that the male VC culture is very out of alignment with a lot of how women entrepreneurs work, more so at a core, where we tend to be more realistic and accurate actually on our projections and how we want to execute things. And a lot of male VCs really want to hear kind of the vaporware, the blow it up big, and it sounds like it's going to be $1 zillion thing. That's all great and good, but not every entrepreneur is going to have that. So realistically, most entrepreneurs, you can have a very successful business without it being necessarily a unicorn. And a lot of, so I think identifying with VCs or whatever fundraising efforts you want to do, aligning it early with how you want to be able to build your business. And I know fundraising is challenging. It's one of the hardest and most humbling things ever to do. So especially if you're also asking friends and family, be careful with that. That also has different implications and strings. So, talking to trusted people in your environment, in your network, if you can, reaching out to people you want to talk to if you don't have somebody readily available. And also local resources around economic development can really be helpful to pointing people in the right direction.
And really quickly, Shercole, I know we were going down a road with this.
No, you're good.
Sara's we're piggybacking off of each other.
I love it.
The point that she just brought out about really understanding your path to funding. And so if you're gonna use sweat equity and bringing people on, understand that sweat equity is not charity. So when you bring people on to do work and you're going to give them equity in the company, they need to deliver on whatever you set those goals to be. And so I learned very early on that a lot of people, when you ask them to come and be a part of what you're creating and you're going to offer them sweat equity, they just felt that they can show up whenever they wanted to. And they didn't take it as a real, contribution to a real goal that you had. And so just be really careful about that they don't treat your sweat equity as charity, because it's not charity. And another thing is, if you're looking at a venture-backed startup, just make sure, number one, you're aligned with the VC that you're looking to partner with, because all money is not good money. And people don't understand that.
That's
So,
fun.
yeah. I turned down a $2 million term sheet in the first couple months of me starting my first ever fundraise in 2018. And folks just were like, wow, like, especially my family, because they don't have background in this. They were like, $2 million, why would you turn it down? Doesn't make sense. But it wasn't aligned with what we were trying to do. And, the other thing you got to recognize and understand is what your exit strategy is going to be. So are you looking to sell the company? Are you looking to have an IPO? Just understand which exit you're going to consider and then kind of work towards that. And so if you're looking at being acquired, you should start, considering partners and the different types of companies that would potentially acquire you. So those are some of the things, I would say if you're looking at it from a venture-backed kind of startup.
Yeah. And SaLisa, I'll add one point. I've been really lucky with my current financial structure with my investors that we kept a smaller angel pool this time around because my first one was so awful and messy. I did not want to go those routes, which did involve VCs and a variety of other things. It was just messy and awful. And so this time around kept it very small. And we didn't have a strategy in mind, an exit at the onset. And what they wisely told me is build a good company and you'll have options. So I think if you are at that early stage and you're just not sure yet, best thing is just to continue to stay with integrity and drive and mission and do it in the right way. And that will be able to create doors that open up for you.
This has really been a rich conversation, and I thank you, SaLisa, for bringing up sweat equity. I think that needs to be taught more. Of the whole protocol behind sweat equity needs to be taught more to people starting businesses, 100%. My final question for you both is, for people who haven't made it to the tech founder stage, but they're just starting to think about entering technology, period, or they just started, do you have any advice for those people who are just getting started in technology, or even thinking about, after listening to you, oh, you know what, maybe I should start thinking about how I can be involved in the technology industries?
I would say if you're looking at getting into tech space, there's a whole lot of groups that you can join. So consider joining some of these affinity groups so you can learn and understand, and go work for a startup. That's what I did. I worked for 4 startups before starting my own company. And so I got to learn the lay of the land before me kind of venturing out there on this big island by myself. I got to see how others did it and what worked well and what didn't work well. But there's a lot of groups out there that you can really join just to understand and learn a little bit about the industry.
Yeah, and keep in mind the tech space is I think the term can be intimidating sometimes. And the tech space can be any role at a tech company in many cases. Right. And by taking any role at a what is defined as a tech company, which this day and age is an internet company, an e-commerce company, a software as a service, SaaS, a subscription like Netflix is a tech company now. I mean, there's all kinds of forms that it can take. And just by getting your foot in the door, you can lean on what you might not have considered a tech role, like copywriting or marketing, and get into a space that has technology involved with it. And while you're there, take your colleagues out meet them out for lunch or take them out to coffee. And even if you choose not to explore that route, take people out to coffee. Ask them if somebody works at a tech company and you're curious, do informational interviews. It's a great way to build your network. And it doesn't have to be a big ask, but you can also be aspirational. Ask somebody you admire and see if they'll spend 30 minutes with you for coffee, because those are the kinds of ways you can find some inspiration for yourself. And more often than not, people who are maybe appear to be where you might want to see yourself in a few years, they were you a few years ago. Everyone starts somewhere. And I think remembering that and kind of asking people, how did you get started in this? And starting to build that, they'll help show you different pathways in. So keeping an open mind and taking people out for coffee or tea, great strategy.
Yeah. So the net is the network. So COI stands for Circle of Influence. And I wanted to share that because I named the company that because I recognized that I didn't get to where I am by SaLisa alone, and neither did my company. It was the people around me and the organizations around me. So that's why I chose that name, because the people that I align myself with in the organizations, that's what helps propel me forward. Those are the people that challenge me. Those are the people that keep me honest. And so like Sara was saying, like when you take someone out to breakfast or lunch and you kind of talk about things, they become mentors or advisors or champions. And they're going to be the people in your network or your circle of influence that are going to keep you on that road and moving you forward versus stagnating you and moving you backwards.
I love that COI, SaLisa. That's amazing.
I know, that's great. I love it.
Circle of influence. I think that's a concept we all should be more aware of, because I think what happens, which is similar that what people think of is culture, that if people talk about culture in an environment, in a workforce, culture happens no matter what, whether it's intentional or not. A good culture, it takes work. And I think your circle of influence, it happens whether you're paying attention or not. It really depends when you're intentional about it and have good influences around you and good select, like people who are essential or really are serving you and you're serving them. It's usually a very mutually beneficial situation, in that you're giving, you're willing to engage, versus a lot of situations where I think if you feel like it's a one-way street, that's usually somebody who should not be in your circle of influence, those kinds of things. So I love that. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Thank you.
Sara, and that's a good point, because when people feel that you're just a taker and you're not a giver, that's when they start, they draw the line and they're not going to want to support you. So great point.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you both. This has been a really rich conversation, and you have me thinking about some ideas that I need to start putting more work behind. I truly appreciate you, and thank you so much, Sara, for being one of our judges as well as participating with us today. And congratulations once again, SaLisa, for being our Tech Founder winner.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, SaLisa, you rock. Keep doing what you're doing. That's amazing.
Thank you, lady. Thank you, Sara, for doing all that you do. 2 companies, that's amazing in itself.
Yeah, not for the faint of heart, as you said.
Exactly.